The truth about Masaki is revealed in my review of Bleach chapter 536. Maybe it's just me, but Bleach chapters just rip right by when I read them, and it almost seems like barely anything happened. But there were some pretty important details here. This was all about, Masaki this week and getting to figure out how she was saved by Ishin and getting to see their backstory and how all that took place. And everything is starting to make a little more sense now. First and foremost, we go back to that weird sort of hollow world where Isen is fighting against that giant hollow face. I thought it was really, really funny that when he was fighting against him, he's like, "Don't you lay a hand on her." And that's kind of weird just because you're a giant head, but I'm still going to get you anyway. And he just cuts the damn thing in half, and it's awesome. Masaki's really, really excited and was probably one of the funniest parts of the chapter. She's just jumping up with joy, and she is completely naked, and she's rocking. So it seems like an instant Masaki has been saved, and because of this, Isen has lost his powers. But luckily for him, he has Urahara there to sort of back him up, and this is where we get to see his backstory is finally getting set into place. We get to see that he finally does become a doctor. He opens up his clinic with the help of Urahara and the stuff that he learned in Soul Society. And then we get to learn some of the things that they've been doing over the past couple of years. First and foremost, Ryu, he is now going to be hanging out with Katagiri. It's pretty obvious that they've had some sort of relationship with each other, and they even hint at it a little bit more. We get to see there's this one panel flashback where we get to see her as a child interacting with Ryu, and they're obviously smitten with each other. But then we finally get to see what happens with Isen and Masaki, and he opens the clinic, everything's fine, she becomes a university student, and they seem to have a really nice and loving relationship. And then that's when we finally get the bombshell at the very end of the chapter. We finally get to go back to Ichigo, and he's talking to him, and he's like, "Well, everything you know from here is pretty much the truth. Rukia showed up, she gave you powers, this was all a part of Aizen's plan. The inner hollow and you woke up, and that meant that my protection stopped, and because of that, Isen got his powers back." And this is really nice. It sort of wraps up everything really nicely and sort of connects everything. But really, the end of the chapter is when he mentions his mother's death. Now, before, we've always seen that Ichigo's mother died to a hollow who was known as Grand Fisher. And with all the events that we've been getting over the past couple of months, learning a little bit more about her, it's pretty obvious she should have been able to handle this. And something just didn't seem right, and that's obviously the case here. And as a lot of people have speculated, there's a little bit more truth to her death. What that is, we don't know yet. They're going to leave that on a cliffhanger this week so that we can read next time. But still, this was a pretty nice exposition chapter, and a chapter that is moving in more into this flashback, which I'm still enjoying quite a bit, getting to learn a little bit more about the backstory of Ichigo's origins and of his mother's death. My favorite part of the chapter is probably the bit at the very beginning where he's talking about don't lay a hand on her, even though the giant hollow head has no hands. I just thought that was really funny, and just, demonstrates again why these characters are so fun to read. But, the stuff at the end, about Masaki's actual death, this is something that fans have been theorizing for a very long time. I tend not to jump into the theory pool too much because, I watch it as I see it, I read it as I read it, and I just like to take it as it is. But, it seems pretty obvious at this point, Grand Fisher was not going to be able to kill Masaki. She's a friggin' badass, who just happens to be goofy as hell as well. So, all in all, I'd say this was a pretty good chapter. It was a little slow in some senses, but it definitely wrapped up a few things and gave us some answers. Pretty nice chapter. I can't wait to figure out what's going on with Masaki. It's obviously going to be probably something pretty dark, because in that final panel, you can definitely tell shit's about to get very serious. And I think that's going to be really sad, especially how much they've been building up this character and how well we've been getting to know her. Still, I'd like her to stick around a little bit longer, because she's a pretty interesting character in herself. But still, it wasn't a perfect chapter of Bleach for me. Like I said, it did drag just a little bit, and I wish a little bit more would happen, and that seems to be the case with Bleach. That's just sort of the pacing that the author has set for the series. And I wouldn't say it's awful. I just wish a little bit more could have possibly taken place. And maybe just a little bit more of explanation. But that's like really nitpicky talking on my side. This was still a good chapter that I think fans of the series should definitely check out. So I'm going to drop a 9 out of 10 on this one. So you guys should definitely check out this chapter. But how did you guys feel about this week's chapter? Were you shocked by the fact that Masaki's death has been a ruse this entire time? I'd love to know what you guys thought, and maybe even your theories about what's really going to happen. You can let me know in your comments below. Remember, guys, as always, if you like this video, make sure and give it a thumbs up. It really helps them out a lot. That concludes this review today. SuperKamiGuru9000 out.